They say that you never really know someone until you see them when everything falls apart. I learned this lesson the hardest way possible when my business partner, someone I trusted like a brother, stole everything from me while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed. But this isn't just a story about betrayal. This is a story about what happens when you refuse to stay down, when you turn your deepest wound into your greatest weapon, and when you decide that revenge is a dish best served with overwhelming success. My name is irrelevant to this story, but what happened to me could happen to anyone who's ever trusted the wrong person with their dreams. 6 years ago, I was running a digital marketing agency with my college roommate, Marcus. We'd built this company from nothing, literally starting in my garage with a second-hand laptop and dreams bigger than our bank account. Marcus handled the creative side while I focused on operations and client relationships. We were the perfect team, or so I thought. Our revenue had just hit 7 figures, we had 12 employees, and we were growing faster than we could keep up with. Life was good. Life was perfect. Until it wasn't. It started with headaches. Not the kind you get from stress or too much coffee, but the kind that feel like someone's driving a railroad spike through your skull. I'd wake up in the morning and the room would spin. I'd be in the middle of a client presentation and suddenly feel like I was going to collapse. For weeks, I told myself it was just the pressure of running a growing business. Marcus kept telling me I needed to take a vacation, that I was burning myself out. If only I had known then what I know now, that he was already planning how to take advantage of my weakness. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday morning in October. Brain tumor. Benign, thank God, but in a location that required immediate surgery. The neurosurgeon explained that I'd need to be in the hospital for at least 2 weeks, followed by months of recovery. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room, still processing the news, when Marcus walked in. He put his hand on my shoulder and looked me in the eye with what I thought was genuine concern. "Don't worry about anything," he said. "I've got the business covered. You just focus on getting better. We're partners, your fight is my fight." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The surgery went well, all things considered. The tumor was removed successfully, but the recovery was brutal. The first week was a blur of pain medication and worried family members. By the second week, I was alert enough to start worrying about the business. I tried calling Marcus multiple times, but he always seemed to be in meetings or dealing with urgent client issues. "Everything's under control," he'd text back. "Just rest and recover. I'll handle everything until you're back on your feet." It was my assistant, Jennifer, who first raised the red flag. She visited me during my 3rd week in the hospital, and something in her expression told me she hadn't come just to bring me flowers and well wishes. She looked around nervously before leaning in close. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she whispered, "but some weird things have been happening at the office. Marcus has been having a lot of private meetings with lawyers. He told everyone you might not be coming back, that your condition was more serious than people knew. He's been talking about restructuring for stability and making some big changes to protect the company's future." My blood went cold. I tried to sit up too quickly and immediately regretted it as pain shot through my head. "What kind of changes?" I managed to ask. Jennifer shook her head. "I don't know exactly, but he's been asking HR for all the employee contracts and company financial records. He also had me cancel your company credit cards, saying it was a security precaution while you were incapacitated. When I asked if I should check with you first, he said you'd authorized him to handle all business decisions during your recovery." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong, but I kept telling myself that Marcus was just being cautious. We were partners. We'd built this company together. He couldn't, betray me like this. But the doubt had been planted, and it grew like a cancer in my mind. The next morning, I called our company lawyer directly. What I learned destroyed any remaining trust one had in the man I'd considered my closest friend. 3 days after my surgery, Marcus had filed papers to assume temporary control of the company, citing my medical incapacitation. He'd used a clause in our partnership agreement that neither of us had ever expected to invoke, a provision that allowed one partner to take control if the other became unable to fulfill their duties due to extended illness or incapacitation. The lawyer explained that this was meant to be a temporary measure, but Marcus had also been consulting with corporate attorneys about making the arrangement permanent. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence. The man I'd trusted with my life's work was systematically stealing it from me while I fought to recover from brain surgery. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd experienced. This wasn't just about money or business, this was about friendship, trust, and loyalty. This was about a person I'd considered family watching me at my weakest moment and deciding it was the perfect opportunity to take everything I'd worked for. But Marcus had made one critical mistake. He assumed that being sick had made me weak. He assumed that I'd just roll over and accept what he was doing. He had no idea that learning about his betrayal had ignited something inside me that no amount of surgery or recovery could diminish. If he wanted a fight, I was going to give him one he'd never forget. The first thing I did was hire my own attorney, not the company lawyer who'd been feeding information to Marcus, but a shark who specialized in partnership disputes and corporate warfare. Despite being barely 3 weeks out of brain surgery, I started documenting everything. Every email, every financial transaction, every decision Marcus had made in my absence. What I discovered was worse than I'd imagined. He hadn't just been preparing to push me out, he'd been actively sabotaging my position for months. Going back through the records, I found evidence that Marcus had been redirecting client communications to himself, slowly positioning himself as the primary contact for our biggest accounts. He'd been having private conversations with our employees, subtly undermining my authority and painting himself as the more stable, reliable leader. He'd even been in talks with potential investors about buying out my share of the company at a fraction of its actual value, claiming that my health issues made me a liability. The most damaging revelation came when I discovered that Marcus had been secretly negotiating to merge our company with a larger competitor. The deal would have made him the CEO of the combined entity while effectively eliminating my role entirely. He'd planned to present this as a fait accompli when I returned from recovery, claiming it was necessary to save the company from the uncertainty created by my illness. In reality, it was a calculated move to cash out my life's work and leave me with nothing. By my 6th week of recovery, I had enough evidence to bury Marcus legally, but I realized that wasn't enough. A legal victory would get me money, maybe even get me the company back, but it wouldn't accomplish what I really wanted. I didn't just want to beat Marcus, I wanted to destroy him so completely that he'd never be able to do this to anyone else. I wanted him to understand exactly what it felt like to watch someone you trusted take everything from you. So I made a decision that surprised everyone, including my lawyer. Instead of fighting for the company, I was going to let Marcus have it. I was going to walk away and start over from scratch. But this wasn't surrender, this was strategy. I was going to build something so much better, so much more successful, that Marcus would spend the rest of his career living in my shadow. The first step was extracting myself from the partnership as cleanly as possible. Using the evidence I'd gathered, I negotiated a settlement that gave Marcus full control of the company in exchange for a cash payout that was far less than my share was worth, but enough to fund my next venture. Marcus thought he'd won. He actually had the audacity to tell me he was sorry it had to end this way, and that he hoped we could remain friends despite the business complications. I smiled and shook his hand, knowing it would be the last time he'd ever feel superior to me. While Marcus was celebrating his victory and trying to manage a company he'd never truly understood, I was quietly laying the groundwork for his destruction. The first advantage I had was knowledge. I knew every client, every employee, every process, and every weakness in the company Marcus had stolen. I knew which clients were unhappy, which employees felt undervalued, and which services were overpriced. This wasn't just market research, this was insider intelligence. The second advantage was motivation. Marcus was running a business he'd acquired through treachery. I was building a business fueled by righteous anger and an unshakable determination to prove that talent and integrity would always triumph over backstabbing and manipulation. There's a difference between someone who wants to succeed and someone who refuses to fail. Marcus wanted success. I refused to fail. I started my new company with a simple philosophy: do everything better than Marcus was doing it. Better service, better prices, better employee treatment, better client relationships. I called it Phoenix Digital, because sometimes you have to burn everything down to rise from the ashes stronger than before. The name wasn't subtle, but subtlety wasn't the point. The point was to signal to everyone in our industry that I was back, I was angry, and I was coming for everything Marcus thought he'd taken from me. The first challenge was funding. The settlement money was enough to get started, but not enough to scale quickly. Traditional investors were hesitant because of my recent health issues and the public nature of my split with Marcus. So I got creative. I reached out to former clients who'd been frustrated with the service they'd received since Marcus took over. Instead of just offering them better service, I offered them equity stakes in Phoenix Digital in exchange for long-term contracts and upfront payments. It was risky, but it worked. Within 2 months, I had 6 major clients who weren't just customers, they were investors with a vested interest in my success. Next, I focused on talent acquisition. Marcus had always been careless about employee satisfaction, viewing staff as replaceable resources rather than valuable assets. I reached out to the best employees from my former company, the ones I'd hired and trained personally. I didn't just offer them jobs, I offered them profit sharing, creative freedom, and the chance to be part of something revolutionary. Within 6 months, Marcus had lost half of his most talented staff to Phoenix Digital. The irony was delicious: he'd stolen my company, but I was taking his most valuable assets. But the real game changer came when I decided to target Marcus's biggest client directly. Meridian Corporation was a Fortune 500 company that represented 30% of my former company's revenue. They'd been our client for 3 years, and I'd personally managed their account before my illness. I knew their CEO, their marketing director, and their biggest pain points. More importantly, I knew they'd been increasingly frustrated with the service they'd received since Marcus took over. Instead of simply pitching Phoenix Digital services, I proposed something unprecedented: a complete digital transformation strategy that would not only improve their marketing effectiveness but also reduce their costs by 40%. I offered to guarantee the results with a contract that penalized me financially if I didn't deliver. It was a massive risk, but I knew I could deliver because I understood their business better than Marcus ever had. The presentation lasted 3 hours. I walked them through a comprehensive analysis of their current marketing strategy, identified 17 specific areas for improvement, and demonstrated exactly how Phoenix Digital would address each one. I showed them case studies from similar companies, introduced them to the team members who'd be working on their account, and provided detailed projections for the next 2 years. By the end of the meeting, Meridian's CEO was ready to sign on the spot. Losing Meridian was a devastating blow to Marcus, but it was just the beginning. I used the success of the Meridian campaign as a case study to attract even bigger clients. Word spread quickly through our industry that Phoenix Digital wasn't just another marketing agency, we were the company that delivered impossible results. Within a year, we'd grown from a one-man operation to a team of 25, with revenue that exceeded what my former company had been generating when Marcus stole it. But success wasn't enough. I wanted Marcus to understand exactly what he'd lost and exactly what he'd created through his betrayal. So I started making moves that were designed specifically to destroy his peace of mind. I hired a public relations firm to publish articles about Phoenix Digital's rapid growth and innovative approaches. I spoke at industry conferences where I subtly referenced the importance of loyalty and integrity in business partnerships. I made sure that everyone in our industry knew the story of how I'd rebuilt after being betrayed by someone I trusted. The psychological warfare was just as effective as the business competition. Marcus started making increasingly desperate decisions to try to compete with Phoenix Digital. He slashed prices to dangerous levels, overpromised results he couldn't deliver, and began alienating long-term clients with aggressive sales tactics. The more pressure he felt, the worse his decision-making became. It was like watching someone slowly drown while refusing to accept help. The end came faster than I'd expected. 18 months after Marcus had stolen my company, he was forced to sell it to avoid bankruptcy. The buyer was a larger agency that was primarily interested in the client list and office space. They offered Marcus a junior position in the merged company, essentially making him an employee in the business he'd thought he was so clever to steal. He lasted 6 months before quitting, or being fired. The rumors vary, and honestly, I don't care which version is true. Meanwhile, Phoenix Digital had become one of the fastest growing marketing agencies in the region. We'd tripled our original revenue, won several industry awards, and been featured in major business publications as a case study in rapid scaling and innovative client service. I'd proven that loyalty, talent, and determination would always triumph over betrayal and shortcuts. But the real victory wasn't the business success, it was the personal transformation. The man who'd entered that hospital room 6 years ago was someone who trusted too easily, who assumed that shared history meant shared values, who believed that good intentions were enough to protect against bad actors. The man who emerged from that experience was harder, smarter, and infinitely more resilient. Marcus had tried to destroy me during my weakest moment, but instead, he'd forged me into something stronger than I'd ever been. The lesson here isn't just about business or partnerships, it's about human nature and the choices we make when we think no one is watching. Marcus chose to see my illness as an opportunity rather than a tragedy. He chose to prioritize short-term gain over long-term relationships. He chose betrayal over loyalty, and manipulation over integrity. Those choices defined him, just as my choices to fight back, rebuild, and refuse to be victimized defined me. There's a quote I keep on my desk now: "Success is the best revenge." I used to think that was just a motivational platitude, but I've learned it's literally true. Marcus spent 2 years dealing with the legal, financial, and emotional consequences of his betrayal. He lost his business, his reputation, and the respect of everyone in our industry. I spent those same 2 years building something beautiful, profitable, and sustainable. While he was explaining to investors why his company was failing, I was presenting growth projections to new clients. While he was cutting staff to reduce costs, I was hiring talented people and giving them opportunities to thrive. Today, Phoenix Digital employs over 100 people across 3 offices. We've been recognized as one of the best places to work in our city, and our client retention rate is over 90%. We've developed proprietary software that's being licensed by other agencies, and we're in talks with several companies about potential acquisitions, not because we're desperate to sell, but because we've built something so valuable that people want to be part of it. Marcus, on the other hand, is working as a freelance consultant, trying to rebuild a reputation that he destroyed through his own choices. I occasionally see his name in LinkedIn updates, usually announcing some new, exciting opportunity, that sounds suspiciously like another attempt to start over. I don't take any pleasure in his struggles, I'm too busy focusing on my own success to waste energy on his failures. The strangest part of this whole experience is how grateful I've become for what Marcus did to me. I'm not grateful for the betrayal itself, but I'm grateful for what it taught me about resilience, about the importance of building systems that don't depend on trust alone, and about the incredible power of channeling anger into productive action. If Marcus had remained loyal, I probably would have been content to run our original company for decades, never pushing myself to achieve what I was truly capable of. His betrayal forced me to discover strengths I didn't know I had and to build something far more impressive than I'd ever imagined possible. I've also learned the importance of surrounding yourself with people whose character has been tested and proven. Every employee at Phoenix Digital goes through an extensive interview process that focuses as much on integrity and loyalty as it does on skills and experience. I've created a company culture where backstabbing and political maneuvering are not just discouraged, they're incompatible with our core values. The people who work for Phoenix Digital know that their success is tied to the company's success, and that betraying that trust means destroying their own future. The business world loves comeback stories, but most of them focus on companies or entrepreneurs who failed through their own mistakes and then learn from those failures. My story is different because I didn't fail, I was sabotaged by someone I trusted. The comeback wasn't about learning from my mistakes, it was about refusing to let someone else's betrayal define my future. It was about taking the worst thing that had ever happened to me professionally and turning it into the catalyst for the best thing that ever happened to me. If you're listening to this and you've experienced betrayal in your own business or personal life, I want you to understand something crucial: the person who betrayed you gave you a gift, even though they didn't mean to. They showed you who they really are, they freed you from a relationship that was built on false foundations, and they gave you the motivation to build something better. The question isn't whether you'll recover from the betrayal, it's whether you'll use it as an excuse to give up or as fuel to achieve something greater than you ever thought possible. The other lesson I want to share is about the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about making someone else suffer for what they did to you. Justice is about creating consequences that match the choices someone made. I didn't destroy Marcus out of spite, I simply built something so much better than what he'd stolen that his betrayal became irrelevant. The market punished him for his poor decisions, his clients left him for better service, and his employees chose to work for a company that valued loyalty over manipulation. I didn't have to destroy Marcus, he destroyed himself through his own choices, and I just made sure there was a better alternative available when people got tired of dealing with him. As I record this story, Phoenix Digital is preparing to launch our most ambitious project yet, a comprehensive business accelerator program that helps other entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes and betrayals that nearly destroyed me. We're teaching people how to structure partnerships that protect against bad actors, how to build companies that can survive the loss of any single person, and how to turn setbacks into comebacks. It's a way of giving back to the business community while also ensuring that what happened to me becomes less likely to happen to others. The program is called Phoenix Rising, and it's based on the principle that every failure, every betrayal, and every setback contains the seeds of future success, if you're willing to plant them properly and nurture them with determination, intelligence, and integrity. We're not just teaching business skills, we're teaching resilience, character, and the kind of strategic thinking that turns obstacles into opportunities. Marcus tried to contact me last year through a mutual acquaintance. He wanted to clear the air and discuss potential collaboration opportunities. I'm told he's struggling to find steady work and thought perhaps I might be willing to give him a chance to prove he'd changed. The request was so absurd I actually laughed out loud. The man who stole my company while I was recovering from brain surgery wanted me to help him rebuild his career. The audacity was almost impressive. I declined the meeting, not out of anger, but out of complete indifference. Marcus is no longer a factor in my success or failure. He's not my rival, my enemy, or my concern. He's simply someone who made bad choices and is now living with the consequences. My focus is entirely on the future, on building Phoenix Digital into something that will outlast both of us, on creating opportunities for talented people who share our values, and on proving every day that integrity and excellence are not just nice ideals but powerful competitive advantages. The most satisfying moment of this entire journey came last month when Meridian Corporation, the client I'd won away from Marcus in the early days of Phoenix Digital, signed a 5-year extension worth $12 million. Their CEO told me that working with Phoenix Digital had been transformational for their business, and that they couldn't imagine trusting their marketing strategy to anyone else. That contract alone was worth more than the entire company Marcus had stolen from me. But the real satisfaction wasn't in the money, it was in the knowledge that I'd built something based on trust, competence, and mutual respect. Marcus had tried to succeed through betrayal and manipulation, and it had ultimately destroyed him. I'd chosen to succeed through excellence and integrity, and it had created something sustainable and valuable. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. As this story comes to an end, I want to leave you with the most important lesson I've learned: your response to betrayal defines you more than the betrayal itself. You can choose to become bitter, paranoid, and closed off from future opportunities. Or you can choose to become stronger, smarter, and more determined to succeed. You can let betrayal make you smaller, or you can use it as the foundation for becoming larger than you ever imagined possible. Marcus thought he was taking everything from me, but he actually gave me the greatest gift of my professional life. He showed me what I was truly capable of when I stopped playing it safe and started playing to win. He forced me to discover reserves of strength, creativity, and determination that I never would have accessed if things had continued to go smoothly. He turned me from someone who was satisfied with modest success into someone who demands excellence from himself and everyone around him. Today, when I look at Phoenix Digital, at the talented people who work here, the innovative projects we're developing, the clients who trust us with their most important challenges, I sometimes wonder if I should send Marcus a thank you note. Not because I'm grateful for the betrayal, but because I'm grateful for who I became in response to it. He tried to destroy me and instead created the strongest version of myself. The ultimate irony is that Marcus's betrayal didn't just fail to destroy me, it made me infinitely more successful than I would have been if he'd remained loyal. The company we built together was successful, but it was built on shared limitations and compromises. Phoenix Digital is built on my vision alone, executed by people who share my values and commitment to excellence. There's no comparison between what we accomplished together and what I've accomplished on my own. This is my story of betrayal, recovery, and ultimate triumph. It's a story about what happens when someone tries to destroy you at your weakest moment and discovers they've actually created their strongest competitor. It's a story about the difference between taking what belongs to someone else and building something that belongs to you. Most importantly, it's a story about refusing to let other people's choices determine your destiny. If you're facing your own betrayal, your own setback, or your own moment of truth, remember this: the people who try to destroy you are giving you the chance to discover what you're really made of. Take that chance. Use their betrayal as fuel for your comeback. Build something so impressive that their treachery becomes irrelevant. Don't just recover, rise higher than you ever thought possible. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's becoming so successful that the person who betrayed you becomes a footnote in your story rather than the main character in theirs. That's exactly what happened to Marcus, and that's exactly what will happen to anyone who mistakes your temporary weakness for permanent vulnerability. The phoenix rises from ashes not because the fire didn't hurt, but because something inside it refused to stay burned. That's the choice we all face when life tries to destroy us: stay down, or rise up stronger than before. I chose to rise, and that choice has made all the difference.